Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So Blizzard has just finished their live stream where they revealed some of the new cards coming to Rise of Shadows. There's a whole bunch of new cards, so I'm going to get straight into it and share those with you. Starting with one which I'm pretty excited about, and this is called Blastmaster Boom. It's a 7-mana legendary for the warrior class. It has 7 health and 7 attack. So it's a bit of a throwback to the old DrBoom, which was a 7-mana 7/7 and summon 2 1/1 boom bots. Well, this has the battle cry of summon 2 1/1 boom bots for each bomb which is in your opponent's deck. Now, the bombs are already in the game at the moment. There's a C4 bomber, which when you play it, it shuffles a 5 damage bomb into your opponent's deck. When your opponent draws it, they take 5 damage to the face, and then they draw another card. So, this requires you to put bombs in your opponent's deck, and at the moment it's not really a very viable option, but they've actually talked about a couple of new cards which will make it quite good. So, before I move on to those, let's talk about the boom bots. If you don't know what a boom bot is, it's just a 1-mana 1/1 minion that when it has a death rattle of deal 1 to 4 damage, so random damage, to an enemy. So it can either be an enemy minion or their face. So it was in the game before, it was really powerful, but that was a neutral minion. This being a warrior class minion, and actually one which is hinging on a particular type of deck, makes it kind of less oppressive, because DrBoom was so good when it was released. It was kind of only the only 7-drop anyone ever played, because, you know, whatever deck you're playing, you just put DrBoom in, and that's not really what we want. So I think that's what they've moved away from here. So let's have a look at some of the other cards which support this. And the first one is a Clockwork Goblin. It's a rare card that costs 3 mana, 3 attack, and 3 health. It is a mech, which is important in Warrior because of the DrBoom synergy, the hero card. But it has a battle cry of shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck, and when drawn, it explodes for 5 damage. So this is one way that you can put a bomb into your opponent's deck. It's a 3-mana 3/3, so it's not terrible. The stats aren't powerful, but you could play this and not fall too far behind in tempo. The problem is you don't know when you're going to be summoning that bomb. And the next card that synergizes with this is called the Wrench Caliber, which is a 4-mana epic weapon just for warrior. It has 3 attack and 2 durability, and it has, after your hero attacks, shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck. So that has the potential to be really strong, because remember, you can put 2 of these in your deck, so that's instantly 4 bombs if you manage to play them. But you can also play upgrade on this to upgrade the durability of it. Captain Greenskin does the same thing, upgrading the durability and the attack. So you can constantly shuffle a lot of bombs into your opponent's deck, which is awesome, really, because I love these type of decks. I think it's really fun, but they are random. So when I first saw DrBoom, when they announced it, I was thinking this isn't going to work. It's just too slow, because let's just imagine your opponent does have 1 bomb in their deck. Then this Blastmaster Boom is a fantastic card. If they've got more than 1, then it just is extremely powerful. But you do have to play a bomb deck to make it work. And these 2 minions, well, this minion and the weapon do make it more viable. There's definitely ways you can make this work. But the problem with a bomb deck is that if you're playing against an aggressive deck, they don't care if they've got bombs in their deck. They're just going to kill you before they draw them. I mean, there will be instances where you get lucky and they draw them early, but they don't want to play if you're playing against an aggressive warrior, they don't want to play a 4-mana 3/2 weapon. They'll play a 3-mana 3/2 fiery war axe. So when you compare it like that, they're instantly ahead of you. They don't want to be playing a 3-mana 3/3. They want to be playing minions that are going to be on the board hitting you fast. And if you're the bomb deck playing against an aggressive deck like that, then you're constantly losing tempo every time you play a card, and you're losing that tempo with the hope that you'll get it back when your opponent draws those bombs at some point. So my point there is, it's not going to be for every matchup, obviously. I just think you would lose very easily to aggro, so you'd have to have a lot of good defensive tools to go with a warrior deck like this. But that being said, I love bomb decks. I love DrBoom. I love the boom bots. So it's going to be a lot of fun trying to make this work. The likelihood that you'll draw DrBoom and your opponent not having a bomb in their deck is also quite high, to be honest. Depending on how many bombs you're going to be playing. But whenever you play these bomb decks, you lose tempo, like I said. So it's just a trade-off. We're going to have to see what all of the other cards are going to be to see whether this will work. But it's one that I'm definitely going to try. Also, another warrior card which was announced is DrBoom Scheme. This is one of the schemes that upgrades at the end of your turn. It's a 4-mana card and it gains 1 armor. And this upgrades each turn. Honestly, until we play with these scheme cards, it's going to be very difficult to say if it's good or not. But I think this is bad. I think this card is bad because any card which just gains you armor isn't enough in Hearthstone. The game's going to slow down a lot because of the rotations, so there is that potential for the meta to slow down a little bit. But to be honest, if you're playing Ironhide, which is a 1-mana card, gain 5 armor, you just don't play it because it's 1 mana do nothing. Because your armor doesn't really matter in a game of Hearthstone. A lot of the time, what you're putting onto the board matters. And in this case, you're spending 4 mana to gain potentially a lot of armor. You can keep it in your hand for 20 turns, you're gaining a whole bunch of armor. That's pretty cool, but you've held this card for that long. So the only way this card's going to be good is if they get lots of armor synergy cards. And there is already a card in the game called Heavy Metal. So that would synergize very well with this because Heavy Metal summons a minion up to the cost of your armor. Up to the cost of 10. So however much armor it is you've got, it will summon a minion of that cost. So that costs 6 mana, this costs 4. So you could play them both in the same turn. So you could play DrBoom Scheme, gain 10 armor, then play Heavy Metal, and you've got a 10 mana minion on the board. The issue with that is that why don't you just put a good 10 mana minion in your deck, or an 8 or 9 mana minion that you want to play, that synergizes with your deck, rather than just getting a random one. And the benefit is you would gain some armor too. Cool. But you have to hold it until you have to hold it in your hand until it upgrades. So I think a lot of these schemes, they may not be very good unless we see some kind of mechanic, which I wouldn't be surprised, that kind of increases the amount of you can get each turn. So maybe your gains happen twice per turn if there's a specific card that can do that. So this one, for me, isn't very good. Next, we're moving on to Rogue. This card's really cool. This is Heistbaron Togwaggle. So he's the legendary for Rogue. 6 mana, 5 attack, 5 health. And it has Battle Cry. If you control a lackey, choose a fantastic treasure. Now, the fantastic treasures are exactly the same as the treasures that come with Marin the Fox. And those are really, really good. And the downside of Marin the Fox was you never knew which treasure you were going to get. Sometimes you could just get one which doesn't really help. But this card allows you, if you've got a lackey on the board, it allows you to discover one. And that is huge. Just discovering one of these treasures, so you get to pick from 4, just is insane, really. And it's not very hard to get it to work either, because the lackeys always cost 1 mana. For 7 mana, you can play this. Will it see play? I think it absolutely will, because lackeys to me seem like very decent cards which are kind of adaptable to a lot of different situations. So regardless of what deck you're playing, I think a lackey might fit into it. Unless you're playing a super aggressive deck, I think a lackey could fit into it, from what we've seen anyway. So putting Heistbaron Togwaggle into a deck just makes sense, because each of these treasures are fantastic. I mean, draw 3 cards and reduce all of their costs to 0. Replace your hand with legendary minions. I mean, their treasures they were all positive, but for some situations you just didn't necessarily want it. Now the Discover takes it away. So this, to me, is a very, very strong legendary. The stats aren't even that bad for 6 mana for the effect that you're going to get. Next up is the Hench Clan Burglar. This is for Rogue as well. It's a 4 mana, 4 attack, 3 health pirate, which is quite interesting. But it has the battle cry of Discover a spell from another class. And this is a little bit different from some of the cards that we've seen in Rogue before, because usually it's Discover a card from your opponent's class. And Blizzard have said they're changing that, because in the mirror, if you're playing against a rogue, then you'll discover rogue spells, which doesn't synergize with the rest of the cards that usually go into a thief deck. So now it will be from a different class. It doesn't have to be your opponent's. So that's quite cool. And it's spells, so you can get loads of cool spells from all the other classes. Like, I love these thief decks because it just creates loads of crazy moments in Hearthstone that you'll never be able to do. And they're only random. Sometimes you can just get some really crazy spells, and that's quite fun. So I like these kind of decks. I think the downside in stats is offset by the effect, because Battlecry Discover a Spell is really strong, but it's a random spell, so it's going to be a slow play, honestly. And thief decks have always struggled because a lot of the time it's a lot like the bomb deck I just talked about. You have to sacrifice some tempo to get a good effect later on, and this adds the effect of randomness in there as well. So thief decks, you never know what you're going to steal from your opponent. Yes, you're generating cards, but some of them could be useless. So I'm excited they're doing this though, because I do like the thief decks. So hopefully they get some more kind of synergies. Next we've got a neutral minion. This is the Evil Cable Rat. It's a 2-mana 1/1 beast, and it has the battle cry of add a lackey to your hand. Now this is the only neutral lackey generating card. They actually said that on the stream. There won't be any others. And to be honest, I don't think it will be played very often. 2-mana 1/1 add a 1/1 lackey to your hand is fine. Mana wise, you're getting 2/2 worth of stats, but for 3 mana, because the lackey costs 1 after you've played it. But the effect of the lackey bundled with this and the body of the lackey makes it worthwhile 3 mana play to put those two together. But it's a neutral minion. Are you going to play this minion in classes that don't have other lackey support? No, I don't think you would. I don't think you put it into any of the classes that don't. So it really depends on what the class lackey generating cards are like, and whether you need to generate lots of lackeys. Obviously in the Togwaggle deck that we just looked at, you need to have a lackey on. You need to control a lackey to get Togwaggle to work. So potentially it could go into a deck like that, but it just, to me, always feels kind of bad playing a 2-mana 1/1. And next we have a really, really cool spell for Rogue. This is called Unidentified Contract. It costs 6 mana. It's epic, and it has destroy a minion, gains a bonus effect in your hand. And we saw this bonus effect with the unidentified weapons from previous expansions. So basically there are 4 different effects that can be applied to this card when you draw it. The problem is you don't know which one of those effects are until you draw it. It will always destroy a minion, so you're always paying 6 mana to destroy a minion, which is expensive, because Assassinate is 5 mana to destroy a minion in Rogue class, and not played very often because it's so expensive. Vilespine Slayer is rotating out, and that is just that was one of the best cards for Rogue, really. A 5 mana 4/3 body with this combo destroy minion. It was so strong. Well, this actually has some pretty cool effects, which I also think are pretty strong. And for 6 mana, I think you would play it if you're playing kind of a control Rogue deck, because it's not as tempo orientated like the Vilespine Slayer is, but it's some pretty good removal for Rogue. So let me tell you about the other effects that it has. So the first one is deal its damage to adjacent minions, and this is probably the best one. It's all situational, of course, but what it means is you can spend 6 mana to kill a minion, then the minion that you kill will deal its attack damage to the minions adjacent to it, and that is a really powerful effect. For 6 mana, if you can kill 3 minions, it's really powerful. It's a lot like a Meteor, which it could even be better than Meteor, and that is a very strong card in Mage, because if they've got more attack than the 3 damage that Meteor does either side, then it's a better card than Meteor. The second one is summon a 1/1 assassin with poisonous and stealth. So again, that's kind of like equivalent to summoning a 2 mana card. A stealth 1/1 poison stealth 1/1 minion with poison is actually really good. So you're paying 6 mana to kill a minion, then you got a 1/1 on the board to kill another minion next turn. That can be pretty strong, and actually it can kind of disrupt your opponent's turns. If they've got a big minion they want to play the next turn, they can't play it unless they've got a way to deal with your stealth minion. The next one is add 2 coins to your hand. That's probably the worst one, but again, situationally it could be very good, because it's just give you 2 mana. So effectively you're paying 4 mana for your unidentified contract. So you know, coins have so many different uses, especially in Rogue, because you can draw cards with it if you've got the Auctioneer on the board. You can also trigger combo effects with it. So it's very good for Rogue, but a little bit weaker than deal damage to adjacent minions, in my opinion. But in the right deck, then it's very good. And the final effect is add a copy of the destroyed minion to your hand. And I really like this one. This is the slowest one because you're likely not going to be able to play that minion that you've killed in the same turn. But it means you could pick any minion in the game and have it in your hand. So that's really cool for Rogue. Obviously you can't pick it, but whatever minion your opponent plays and you kill, then you could eventually get it in your hand. So it opens up loads of cool possibilities. And it's this kind of card that I like. It sort of would fit into a Thief Rogue card as well, or deck. The problem with this card is, of course, that though you never know what effect you're going to get from that. It destroys a minion is great, but you don't know what the bonus effect will be. However, I think that the mana package is good. Remember, this card doesn't require to be comboed. So when you're playing a Vilespine Slayer, that requires to be comboed first, which means, you know, you're playing a 1 mana card or whatever, plus your Vilespine, that makes 6. This is just 6 on its own. So this is a really cool card, and it depends on what type of decks come out for Rogue. But I think it will see play. The problem with it that I see right now is it's quite slow tempo-wise compared to a Vilespine Slayer. But like I said, that was one of the best cards ever printed, really. Next, we're moving on to Mage, and this is a really interesting card. I like this one. This one's Khadgar. He's a legendary 2 mana minion, 2 attack, 2 health, and your cards that summon minions summon twice as many. So instantly you can think of Astromancer. That's a 7 mana 5/5 which summons a minion depending on how many cards you've got in your hand. Well, now suddenly it will summon 2 minions. That is a huge power play. And the good news about Khadgar is he only costs 2 mana, so you can play that on the same turn as an Astromancer. But the big one, the biggest one probably, is you can play this on the same turn as Jan'alai. So you're summoning 2 Ragnaroses. That's pretty powerful, and you'd still have 1 mana left over to do something if you wanted to. So that's really kind of like a good use of it. It could also work quite well with Unexpected Results, which is the 4 mana spell which came out in the Boomsday. Summon 2 random 2-cost minions upgraded by spell damage. Well, now it would summon 4. So you can see instantly this card can get you some really strong kind of value power plays basically. And the 2 mana cost makes it really important. I'm surprised it is only 2 mana, but I did quite like some of the plays. And they also announced another card which synergizes with it, and this one is pretty special, I think. It's 8 mana, so it's quite expensive, but it has discover a 6-cost minion and summon 2 copies of it. Now, you will be able to summon 4 copies of 1 6-cost minion if you play this with Khadgar. So you can see instantly that could be suddenly a huge power play. Now, let me just take you to some of the 6-cost minions. Now, some of them will be rotating out, but I just want to show you some of the good ones, which will be in the game still. Now, mage ones aren't very good. You've got the Meteorologist and the Arcanosaur, 6 mana 3/3s. But remember, it's Discover, so you're going to be able to, if you get one of these, you're going to be able to not pick it and pick something else. Toki Time Eater would be alright. But some of the good 6-drops, if we go into the neutral cards, Argent Commander, and even better, Reckless Rocketeer. So if you had Khadgar out, you could do 20 damage to your opponent's face if you got a Reckless Rocketeer and get 4 of these. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to rely on that combo because Reckless Rocketeer is one of many 6-drops. But other good ones, you get Hogger. Hungry Essence rotating out, but Mechanical Whelp could be good. A little bit slower because you have to wait for the Death Rattles, but that could be quite good. Damaged Stegatron's going to be one you're going to be looking for, and Cairn Bloodhoof would be another really good one. So Boulder Fixed Ogre as well is pretty decent if you summon 4 of those. Really hard for your opponent to deal with. So that is kind of like a really huge power play for Mage. It is a legendary, so you do have to. You can only put 1 in your deck. But that's a pretty cool card that I'm pretty excited to give a go. Power Creation in itself, 8 mana to discover 2 6-cost minions is a good value play on its own. The issue with it though is it's an 8 mana spell. 8 mana spells are really difficult to play. Like Twisting Nether, a completely different class, but Twisting Nether costs 8 mana. When you play that, you're playing it in the knowledge that your opponent's board is cleared as well. If you're playing this for 8 mana, you're not going to be able to play anything else to really impact your opponent's board. So, although you can summon minions with Taunt, and that would be great, if you don't summon Taunt minions or Charge or Rush, then it might be quite hard to deal with your opponent's board. So, it is a little bit slower. It's quite expensive, but I think the effect can be really good. And Mage has got loads of effects to stall the board, like freeze effects, if you could play, just to slow your opponent's board down. So I like this one. I think it's pretty cool. And the Astromancer deck was already pretty good for Mage. You could play it in the meta during Rastakhan. So I think adding these kind of things will only help that deck archetype. Next we have another Mage card. This is a 3 mana 3/2 beast. And it's the Messenger Raven, and it has the battle cry of Discover a Mage minion. This is a bit interesting because a 3 mana 3/2 is pretty weak. The stats are weak. The 2 health is very easy for your opponent to deal with. A Backstab, for example, just gets rid of this instantly, and that's not a great 3 mana play. Discover a Mage minion to me as well doesn't seem very good. Now, there are some good cards you can get. If you're playing the right kind of deck, you could discover Jan'alai. You could discover Kalikos, the new legendary dragon, which is just in Mage. There's a lot of other kind of good value generating minions. You could discover Khadgar, that kind of thing. But is it worth it? It's a very strange card to put into Mage, really. Discover a random Mage minion. But you get a choice of 3, so you're likely to get something good. And the reason why it's kind of a good card and it kind of works is its card generation. So if you're playing Astromancer, when you play a card and it generates a card back and keeps your hand full, that is good. So I think that's kind of why this is being printed. Whether or not it will see play just depends on how slow the meta is, because playing a 3 mana 3/2 like this isn't great. But in the early game, that is. But in the late game, it's not too bad, because if you're playing this on turn 10, you can discover another minion which you might be able to play again on the same turn. So we'll see how that one shakes out. Finally for today, there was a card that came out before the reveal stream, and that is Madame Lazul. This is a 3 mana 3/2 priest minion. What a card this is. Battlecry, discover a copy of a card in your opponent's hand. Now we just covered a 3 mana 3/2. But this is discover a card in your opponent's hand. And yes, I would much rather do that than discover a random Mage minion. The reason is twofold. One, if your opponent's playing a card in their deck, it means it's a good card most of the time. They're not going to put bad cards in their deck. So when you play it, you can kind of reliably expect it to be a decent card. The second thing is it shows you 3 cards from your opponent's hand. So you get some really good information on what cards your opponent has, kind of what combos they've got coming up, maybe even what sort of deck they're playing. You can play this early on in the game as well and just get some good value that way. This is a similar effect to the Chameleos card that's in Priest already, and that's the one that changes at the end of your turn into one of your cards in your opponent's hand. So you could get quite a lot of information, and that was really fun. It was really cool to do that. This one, however, allows you to discover 3, so instantly you'll see 3 cards in your opponent's hand, and take one of them. So it opens up loads of cool possibilities of what a priest can do, what sort of cards they can steal. You could have any card that your opponent can have can suddenly be in your hand. You can only play it once, of course. Zola the Gorgon's rotating out, so it's not going to be easy to bounce back to your hand. But Priest does have Science. I don't think you would really want to use it on this 3 mana 3/2 card, but potentially if you were fishing for something in your opponent's hand, something like that would be worth it. So I really like this card. It's a bit of a slow early game play, but something you could play later on in the game. Just when the game kind of comes to a crunch, you could discover what's in your opponent's hand and give you that kind of edge about what they're going to do. to help you play around certain things. So I really like these types of cards. It's a legendary. You can only put one, so it's not going to be like, it's not going to be overpowered. It's not going to ruin your playing against. This isn't going to feel awful all of the time. Sometimes it will, but I really think this card's pretty cool. Okay, and that's it. That's all of the cards that they've revealed for today. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Let me know which one of these cards is your favourite. I think there's been loads of cool legendaries revealed. I actually like all of them. Madame Lazul, Togwaggle, and Dr.Boom that were revealed today are all really cool. Dr.Boom hinges a lot. He hinges a lot on the bombs, but it's still going to be quite cool. I think Togwaggle with the lackeys is going to be viable because the lackeys seem pretty good. And Madame Lazul seems to be a pretty decent card that you can put, a versatile card that you can put in lots of different decks. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be covering more of the cards as they come out, so I'll see you then. Thanks, guys.